Hi, Billy Cunningham, the great American, a congressman that has great knowledge about what happens at a purported political assassination, is Congressman Brad Wenstrup of the state of Ohio and the 2nd Congressional District. He was there when a Democratic activist named James T. Hodgkinson, the man identified as a shooter, tried to decapitate the leadership of the Congress. Now, this did not get the play it should have gotten because of who were the victims. But in 2017, what began and later on metastasized to what happened Saturday night began in 2017. And Hodgkinson had many posts saying Trump is a traitor. Trump has destroyed our democracy. It's time to destroy Trump and company. Republicans are the Taliban. And he was an MSNBC loyal viewer. He also was a Bernie Sanders supporter. He took his time. And the leadership in 2017 were all Republicans, of course, of the House. And he hunted them down. He stayed in the van. He took his time, fired something like 100 or 200 shots. And it was a miracle that more were not shot other than Congressman Steve Scalise. The only reason the congressman, including my guest, lived is because there were Capitol Police there. There are 3 branches of the federal government. The legislative branch was attacked by James Hodgkinson. The judicial branch was attacked after Chucky Schumer said that you never know what's going to hit you. That is Gorsuch and Kavanaugh. Then someone with a gun was found outside Kavanaugh's home, another attempted assassination. And then what happened Saturday night, the executive branch of government, which is Donald Trump. So all 3 branches, all Republican intended, executive, legislative, and judicial, have all been attacked by left-wing leftists, Democrats who wanted to decapitate part of some branch of the government. Joining you and I now is that same Congressman Brad Wenstrup. And what happened Saturday night? Did that give you flashbacks to your time serving in Iraq, or did it give flashbacks in 2017 when Hodgkinson wanted to decapitate the Congress?
Yeah, I would say that this event that happened last night was a little bit more reminding me of the baseball field, but the baseball field definitely reminded me of being in Iraq, because there were, as you mentioned, there was 136 rounds fired. I mean, this was a real battle that went on for almost 10 minutes, and in this case, it was over pretty quickly by and large. Unfortunately, President Trump got hit but not killed, and unfortunately some people did get seriously injured and one man killed while saving his children as he dove on top of them. But, you know, this has been going on for a while, Bill. You know, when the thing happened at the baseball field 7 years ago, Paul Ryan came to the floor of the House and he said, attack on one of us is an attack on all of us. And it seemed like we could all be united and maybe things would get a little bit better. But they didn't. They didn't. That didn't last very long, unfortunately. And we've heard the rhetoric now for years, especially against Donald Trump, but against Republicans in general. I mean, I can't think of many hearings when members on the left, they can't make a comment about an issue without, you know, saying Republicans this, Republicans that. It's their nature, and I guess they think it works for them. But when you spend all this time saying things like it's going to be the end of democracy, well, the man was president before. There wasn't an end of democracy, but nobody in the press says, based on what? Why are you saying this? Because he challenged the election like Al Gore did? Or when Donald Trump won the first time, I saw members of Congress, one right after the other, trying to not certify the president. I mean, the hypocrisy is unbelievable. So it's not the end of democracy. They call him a dictator. And, you know, when people hear that, they think, oh, well, I guess we're supposed to take him out. And you couple that with things like President Biden saying it's time to put Trump in the bullseye.
Yes, about a week. Let's talk about that. This was on Politico.com about 5 days ago. That the president of the United States said it's time to put Trump in the bullseye, quote unquote. Isn't that a problem?
Yeah, well, it's a terrible problem. Can you imagine if Trump said that about Joe Biden? They would be going ballistic. And matter of fact, I will tell you that if this happened the other way around, if something like this happened to President Biden, which, you know, I would certainly not condone, just as I don't condone any of these things, there would be riots in the street. There would be riots in the street, and it would be Donald Trump's fault. That's what it'd be. Just across the board, they have turned him into Dr. Evil, and we must get rid of him. And you take a young 20-year-old, which we now know, they're very impressionable. And I wonder about their entire education, not just what they're hearing from politicians, but there is an underlying current of hatred in many parts of the Democratic Party today. And I believe it's in our education system as well. Just look at what we're seeing. It's hateful rhetoric. It motivates the unstable and the indoctrinated mind, for sure.
In addition to saying Trump is the target, I have a quote here from his 2022 Joe Biden speech in front of Freedom Hall there in Philadelphia with the red backlit lights and the Marines standing at attention behind him. That this is Joe Biden, who's now calling for peace and civility. But he said, quote, Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent extremism that threatens the very foundations of our country. There's no question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans. That is a threat to the United States. In my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They refuse to accept the outcomes of free elections. They're working right now as I speak in state after state to give power to decide elections to partisans and cronies, empowering election deniers to undermine democracy itself, quote unquote. And he said 5 days ago, Trump is the target. But now he's got religion.
Well, think about this. And so why do they do this? Why do they say that? Because maybe they don't have anything to offer? How could he be someone who's trying to end democracy and put America at risk? Remember, this is the guy that took out Soleimani, who's responsible for so many American deaths in Iraq and around the world. This is the guy who went face-to-face with President Xi and confronted him on COVID, which we now know. We now know it came from China, yes. And they tried to cover it up.
Yes.
This is the guy who Putin didn't mess with. Remember, Putin went into Crimea section of Ukraine under Obama-Biden, I might add, and he didn't do it under Trump. And then he invades Ukraine again when it's President Biden. This is the guy who put together peace accords in the Middle East, and now the Middle East is a mess. This is the guy who orchestrated the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement that was supported by unions in America. So I guess they do feel threatened by him because he actually has been able to get things done in conjunction with a Congress, to be honest with you, because I was there working on all these things with him. I mean, this is a real leader, and it's going to be an iconic photo, I believe, where he is raising his fist in the air like, you will not get me. We will not be denied. We are going to do everything we can for the people of America. And a lot of those people were there last night, and one of them lost his life. But, what will not happen, and it never happens whenever there's a shooting, we don't have a cry, we don't have a professional output from the government where they try to look at what were the thoughts and feelings that were going through someone's mind that made them think this was okay. No, they just go to the gun. They don't look at the real details of it. I only have an undergraduate degree in psychology and not a master's, but you got to start looking at these types of things and figure it out and own up to it. And everyone has to take a look in the mirror with the rhetoric that they spew. And I would say that what we see from the left is violent in every way. It's not about policy. It's just about hating someone. And you see so many comments that somebody recently reported on that various actors and musicians have come out with, and they talk about Trump. They talk about stabbing him, shooting him, throwing him over a cliff,
decapitating
make him a martyr,
cutting his head off.
Him. Yeah, I mean, this is unbelievable. And if you're going to allow this to go on, and the mainstream media is complicit, because they should be condemning these people every step of the way. So if we're going to have a country that can rely on a president that seeks truth and justice for the American people, it's President Trump. And I think that this shooting just highlights why we've got to make a change.
Congressman Brad Wenstrup, I'm looking at a posting, Democratic U.S. House of Representative Benny Thompson, who's the Mississippi Democrat in charge of the so-called January 6 hearings, he's got a staffer. She's a case manager and a field director named Jacqueline Marceau. She posted the following an hour after the assassination attempt, quote, "This is Congressman Benny Thompson's, one of his top assistants in Congress, quote, I don't condone violence, but please get you some shooting lessons next time so you don't miss," quote, unquote.
Wow.
Now, what does it mean when one of the leaders of the House of Representatives have an assistant who says, quote, "I don't condone violence, but please get some shooting lessons next time so you don't miss," quote, unquote?
Well,
Go ahead.
yeah, well, I was going to say, there's many Democrats that I can work with. We know where we don't agree, and we know where we can find some common ground, get some things done. We talk to each other civilly. We're more than happy to spend time together. It's a small number. It's a small number, but they need to start speaking up, too, because I know that some of the people that I consider to be friends and political opponents, if you will, but I consider them to be friends, and I know that they can't think all of this stuff is right, they need to speak up about it.
Well, she was fired. Allegedly, Benny Thompson fired her. She'll be back in a little bit. Do you trust these alphabet soup agencies? I look at the FBI, I look at Jimmy Stewart, look at Ephraim Zimbalist Jr., great field offices here in Cincinnati throughout the United States, the rank and file among the best. Secret Service, I love those men and women. I've worked with them a little bit when I've introduced the Trumpster, and when I interviewed them a couple times, they were there, wonderful people, rank and file, no problem. But the FBI under DOJ raided the home of Donald Trump. The CIA, after he became president, quickly launched investigations and had false affidavits filed. They knew it was a lie about the Russian collusion delusion and did nothing about it. The FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop for almost a year before the election and kept it under wraps because it hurt Joe Biden. And they can't find out who had the cocaine in the White House. And one of the Secret Service agents for Kamala Harris had a nervous breakdown with guns and fights. Do you trust the leadership of the CIA, the FBI? Do you trust them to independently and objectively cover this thing? I don't trust the leadership, but I love the rank and file.
Well, the rank and file, no doubt, they're out there every day making things happen. But Crossfire Hurricane was a perfect example where you had members in the leadership of the FBI, along with James Comey and everything else, really trying to undermine the election of Donald Trump the first time. And Crossfire Hurricane was a plan to try and take him down. The Russian collusion thing was a hoax. It was paid for by the Democratic Party because ultimately they paid Christopher Steele to write some dossier that proved to be false. You now see situations where when Biden had a debate last time, they changed, or they went out and got all these former intelligence agents, all 51, Democrats, of 51, course, 51, to say, oh, the Hunter laptop, it looked like Russian disinformation. They worded it carefully so they weren't actually saying that it was, but they knew what it would do for Joe Biden. They even have said that. We've discovered all these things. We've discovered the things that were taking place with EcoHealth Alliance, and they were getting grants from the U.S. government and doing gain-of-function research in China. We have many things to clean up. I wrote a piece about this on the 4th of July, and what I was saying is we do have some things to celebrate. We can celebrate if we have a Congress that takes back being the representatives of the people and running the country. Our agencies are out of control. They change the laws that we write, even when we've spelled out exactly how they should be interpreted. This goes on, and it's got to change, but Congress has to get tough. And probably it really needs to come from both sides of the aisle. I will tell you, when I have not had cooperation from the agencies, and I'm speaking in the Intelligence Committee especially, at one point I just said, let me remind you that we created your agency and we fund your agency. And guess what? I got what I asked for. We have to do more of that. We have to cut off the funds to agencies or components of agencies that are not adhering to the rules. And also what we just did with reform to the FISA court so that what happened to Donald Trump can never happen again. We put in 57 new sets of criteria one, to make something like this never happen again. And if it does, you're criminally liable, because it's only the military where we have a uniform code of military justice. The agencies seem to not have to adhere to anything or take any accountability or have any liability.
Well, Senator Chuck Schumer says you'll never know what's going to hit you. Then an attempted assassination occurs on Justice Kavanaugh. And you have Trump is the target, quote unquote, Joe Biden. Then you have this assassination attempt. And then you have Executive Branch James Hoskinson is sitting there. And the police, the FBI called that suicide by cop. The FBI and Christopher Wray could not discover the political leanings of this leftist who wanted to decapitate the United States Congress. They called it suicide by cop. That was a lie. And I'm glad you got that changed. Suicide by cop. Are you kidding me?
I did get it changed because we had a public hearing where I went through the events of the day. And now Christopher Wray was not in charge of the FBI at the time. It was Andrew McCabe, who was part of Crossfire Hurricane. And so we're still investigating that. And it's been pulling teeth. And I told Director Wray that I don't want to have to issue a subpoena, but I will. And he knows that. And we have since launched an Inspector General investigation, and I've had good conversations with that person, and he recognizes that this is completely botched by the FBI.
Yep.
The question is why, and we need to look at their internal emails to see what they discussed. And likely, somewhere out there, somewhere, it's, we're not about to say that a Democrat tried to shoot a bunch of people. It's only Republicans that do things like that. Well, the most recent history has shown it's not that way. It is the Democrats that are the ones conducting the violence, tearing down cities, and this has to come to a stop.
Well, let's hope the kind words, so to speak, of Joe Biden, who said 5 days ago, Trump is the target. Hopefully his little speech in the Oval Office, mumbling, stumbling, and fumbling through it. I couldn't understand most of it. Actually, he, instead of talking about it, he's kind of the arsonist who steps back and then is shocked the building is on fire. But nonetheless, once again, Congressman Brad Wenstrup of the great state of Ohio, thank you for coming on the Bill Cunningham Show. And this week's going to be exciting, especially Thursday night. Brad Wenstrup, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you. Let's continue.